Welcome back, everybody. Automotive Inc. Today we are working on my Pop's 2011 GMC Sierra with the 6.6 D-Max. So he's always done really religious maintenance on it, but unfortunately it's been sitting for several years now just because he wasn't able to drive it. So today we are doing it. I will link everything down in the description where you can go get it on the Zahn a little bit cheaper. And frankly, a lot of this stuff you can get overnight. So you can order it on a Wednesday and have it by Thursday and do it on the weekend. So on 2011, they ran the LML from, 11 to 16, I think. So always check your owner's manual. Make sure your current make and model this fits. There's also usually a parts confirmer on the actual Zahn and every other website to confirm that this is indeed the right one, but it's basically the same pretty much from 2008. But nonetheless, a PF 2232 AC Delco. If it's GM, I run AC Delco. If it's Chrysler Ram and I can run a Mopar filter, I will pay for those filters. Other people like Wix, Napa, K&N, whatever floats your boat. If it's Ford, I run Motorcraft filters. And so this right here is like $9. Now I will be doing the fuel filter and the air filter in separate videos so you can look at these super quick. You're going to need 10 quarts of 1540. Okay, you can get this stuff on the Zahn too. Make sure that it hits the CJ4, CI4 standard as your minimum oil. This is going to be full synthetic because this truck is older, not necessarily high mileage, not super expensive. We use this at the shop where we use on semis, so I run this. On my Ram, I typically always ran Rotella, so whichever one floats your boat. 10 quarts. It's cheaper to buy 3 of these big jugs than it was to buy 2 quarts separately. It's like $10, 11 bucks, something like that for 2 quarts, or 19 bucks for a gallon. So it's always good to have some extra oil around the house for topping off and checking oil. Other than that, my drain plug on this truck should be OEM. My Pops didn't change out that 13 millimeter socket wrench. Recommend an extension, just the way they have that angled in there. Then you're going to need a large oil pan. Now I have one that collects the oil. I can cap it off and then take it down and recycle. As always, I encourage you guys to recycle your oil correctly in the right way. I know it's a pain, but there are a lot of places that will take the oil still. It just depends if their bin is full or not, or tank, I guess. All right, guys, so you can see right here, this is my pan. I'll put a link in there to do it. This will hold enough to do a Power Stroke and a Cummins, which is usually like 15 quarts on some of my older Power Strokes. I've had this pan for years. There's the oil drain hole. Again, don't use an impact gun on that. That bolt is not, or sorry, that drain plug is not all that robust. And this thing looks like towards the last couple oil change, my dad must take it to a shop because it's kind of rounded out. I see people using those on there. Again, lefty-loosey, take it off. Let it drain for a while. Highly encourage you to make sure that the diesel is fairly cool. Doesn't have to, I wouldn't want it ice cold because we want that stuff to come out. But definitely don't do it after it's been burning down the road. So right up here is the oil filter, and it always makes a mess. The way they did it, you can see right there, part of the suspension is kind of sticking in there. So that's kind of a pain, but we'll get that off here in a second. And like I said before, guys, when it comes to diesel maintenance, I do these at 5,000 miles. You can try, and if you're not doing the severe service according to the manual, you can extend these out if you want. As long as you're using a good oil, maybe a full synthetic would help. Extend that if you feel comfortable with that. For me personally, 5,000 period on any diesel, any gas, 5,000 or less, period. So at the end of the day, make sure you keep your receipts if your vehicle is under any type of warranty so you can prove that you actually changed your oil and what you changed it with. But we're going to let this drain until there is nothing left coming out of there, and then I'm going to take that filter off. I'll show you the way I get it off. I would highly discourage you from puncturing the bottom end of that to drain the oil out of there. It's going to make a mess anyway, but every time somebody punctures an oil filter, they forget at some point, they pick it up and oil all over the garage. So I'd rather have it contained underneath just the truck itself. But between the 3 jugs of oil, that was $60. plus tax, and the filter was $10. So we're talking about $70 to do your oil change on this, and that's using a full synthetic, and that's mobile Delvac. So I think that's pretty reasonable. That's going to be about $10 more than what I paid to do the Godzilla. And you might be wondering why the heck we do this, because there's people out there, these trucks are still out there. I'm just trying to help people out. So make sure you hit the subscribe button, because we're going to be doing some cool stuff with the old truck for a little bit. No, I didn't get rid of my 24 Super Duty, but you'll want to hit the notification bell too, so you know when I'm also posting new content, because the fuel filter is kind of the one that's actually a big pain in the butt too, and we'll be doing that in a different video. That tightened up again, guys. You do not have to go crazy or wonky with that. So that's done with there. Now we're going to come up here. Got this handy dandy tool right here. I'll put the link down below. Don't use this to assemble, but it'll hook to a 3/8 drive right there. Again, lefty loosey. Get your oil pan under here, because this thing makes a mess. All right, in preparation, guys, because the filter itself is at an angle, you really can't fill it with hardly any oil. It's just going to dump all over. So I just give it a little splash and then just kind of roll it around in there, so the filament's already kind of soaked up some of it. Always remember to make sure the old filter, the gasket, comes off. Sometimes these will stick, especially on the fuel filters on the diesels. Put a little ring of your oil down there. Now let's get underneath. I'm going to show you how this kind of runs. So when I take this off, I like to start it off and let it just kind of stay on there and run, because it's already going to make a mess anyway. And this time I actually just set it, forget it, let it drizzle out, spun it off left a little bit more, let it drizzle out, and once it kind of just stopped, took it off, and it actually didn't blow all over. But once you pull this off, there's going to be a lot of oil still coming out of the port, so keep your oil pan there and let most of that stuff come out before you put the new filter on. Otherwise it's going to fill up with old oil. All right, you can see right there it's still fizzling out. Make sure you clean out the ring, the mounting surface where it's going to mount. That's where sometimes that rubber gasket will stay. You can still see it's fizzling out, but you can see right here it runs down right here every time on the Duramaxes. So but it's better than puncturing the bottom of your filter and trying to drain it that way. That will drain for hours like this. So just do it that way, get it cleaned up, get some degreaser. So we're going to go ahead and get this turned, put back on. Remember to, once we get it all on and we put the oil back in it, which I'll show you here in a minute, make sure everything's tight, get back underneath here, check for leaks later. This filter actually wasn't all that tight, so shame on the I'm not even going to name it, the shop that did it, but at the end of the day, if you get it tight, it's hand tight, quarter turn past that with your hand, not a tool, it will not work itself off. I've never had one work itself off, and I've had some rattling Cumminses. So we're going to go ahead and get the new filter installed, get the pan pulled out, and I'll show you how we put the oil in, because last time I did an oil change, somebody wanted to see my my actual funnel that I used. All right, the funnel I like to use is a cheap old Walmart one. I'll put a link on Zahn where you can get one of these. Super cheap. This one actually comes with an actual screw-on, like def nozzle, and that one will actually fit some of the 1-gallon jugs, which makes it really nice when you're adding oil in a truck or car where the oil feels kind of like the Godzilla. It's kind of not in a great place. So from here, we're going to go over here. On this 11 D-Max, the oil cap is right here. I like to always wipe them off. They're typically covered in grease and grime, even kind of underneath the cap itself. And that way, when you take it off, you're not potentially introducing it. Now, people that work in the dirt, around the dirt and farms and ranches and stuff, you'll know what I talk about, because you'll get underneath there and this thing is just covered in dust and fuzz. Clean that off, let it fall down there versus having it fall in here. Once we get it off, I'll take a lint-free cloth and clean off all this goop and the O-ring. We're going to put the oil in here. Again, what I like about this is it sits in there very stable, but you're still going to need to keep a hand on it, guys. Now, before we do that, I always like to clean off the dipstick, stick it in, pull it out, make sure we got all the oil out. Now, if you're going to use a shop to do this, no problem, guys. I understand doing your own oil can be a pain in the rump. But again, before you leave, let it sit for a few minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. Check the oil, make sure that 1, they didn't overfill it, 2, they didn't fill it, or they filled it enough, and that you don't have any leaks. I've seen it all too often. They have those lube guns or the oil guns, and it overfills it. that's a bad thing. So, all right, so check the dipstick, clean it off. It's 100% empty. And now we are going to put 10 quarts. Each one of these is a gallon, so 4 quarts to a gallon. So we're going to need 2.5 of those 1 gallon jugs. Some of them have the little hash marks on there where you kind of denote a quart and whatnot. When you get close to that 10th quart, just check it often. We don't want to overfill it. Keeping in mind the filter is empty, so if it's just a smidge under that and you're using a gallon, it will take 10 quarts, period, with the filter change. If you're not changing the filter, which I'm not sure why people would want to do that, you might use about a quart less just because the filter will absorb some and stuff like that. So keep that in mind. Changing the filter, 10 quarts. Not changing the filter, watch around that 9th quart instead. So I'm going to go ahead and get this topped off. All right, after that, once you get your oil in there, check it, looks good. Go ahead and take your funnel out, put your cap back on. Don't forget to take this and put it back on. I do quality inspection on trucks, and so many mechanics just set this aside. You get your oil changed at Jiffy Lube or someplace, make sure this is on. Run the truck for about 10 minutes. Like I said, if they run it, pull it out, just shut it off, let it sit. Check for leaks, check the oil drain pan plug, oil filter, cap under the hood, and make sure your oil level is correct. Not too high, not too low, just right. If your truck burns a little oil and it's down at the bottom of those hash marks, typically in a small pickup like this, it could take up to a quart. If it's a semi, typically that's a gallon roughly. But at the end of the day, that is the oil change. Everything will be in the description. You can click it and go and put everything in your bag. It is a lot cheaper getting this stuff off the Amazon. A fuel filter at the store here locally is about $50. You can buy them there in AC Delco one. I'm going to do the fuel filter next and the air filter. And they're all about half price on the Zahn. So as far as I can tell, there's nothing about them that makes them any less a GM part, unless you're just buying some off-the-wall brand, and I would really highly discourage you to buying some no-name brand unless you've had a good experience with them. As always, everybody, appreciate you guys being here. Catch you on the next one.